The Power of Ho Aponopono, An Introduction to the Ancient Hawaiian Healing Ritual.
Be careful what you water your dreams with. Water them with worry and fear, and you will produce weeds that choke the life from your dream. Water them with optimism and solutions, and you will cultivate success. Always be on the lookout for ways to turn a problem into an opportunity for success. Always be on the lookout for ways to nurture your dream. Forward. Ho Aponopono is an ancient Hawaiian practice of reconciliation and forgiveness. Similar forgiveness practices were performed on islands throughout the South Pacific, including Samoa, Tahiti and New Zealand. Traditionally, Ho Aponopono is practiced by healing priests or kahuna lapa among family members of a person who is physically ill. Modern versions are still performed within the family by a family elder or by the individual alone. In recent years, thanks to authors such as Joe Vitale and Dr. Hugh Len, knowledge of this amazing practice has filtered through into Western culture. Because we each experience the world through our own unique window, and we have the divine power to manifest our own reality, this ancient healing ritual insists that if a problem is in our awareness, then we must take responsibility for it in order to remove it. My name is Craig Beck, and in the power of Ho Aponopono, I will give you a brief introduction and grounding in this life-changing style of meditation. By implementing the easy-to-follow steps in this book, you can effect positive change in your own life and also in the lives of all those that you love. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. As my sufferings mounted, I soon realized that there were two ways in which I could respond to my situation. Either to react with bitterness or seek to transform the suffering into a creative force. I decided to follow the latter course. Martin Luther King Jr. Most people can grasp the concept that you get what you give. If you want more love, then you should give more love. Where this principle hits a sticking point is with people in situations where they are getting the direct opposite of what they're giving. For example, you may be a very loyal individual with strict morals over infidelity, but you repeatedly find yourself with a partner who cheats on you. Or, even more extreme, perhaps you end up in relationships that turn abusive, whether that abuse is mental or physical. It would be quite understandable for you to object to certain aspects of this book based on your situation. What I want you to understand is that even though you're not giving out the negative behavior that you're on the receiving end of, you're still manifesting it into your life. Remember what I said about the magic ray gun, but with no safety switch. Whatever you point that gun at will manifest and without any protective filters to prevent you getting perfectly horrible outcomes. The problem is that this magical manifestation device resides in a part of your being that you are prevented from accessing on a conscious level. This may at first feel unfair or frustrating, but trust me, it is a very, very good thing that you can't get access to this weapon of mass destruction or bliss, depending on how you use it. Your subconscious is in direct control of the ray gun, and it is firing it every second of every day, bringing things into your life that it believes you want. You might wonder how this part of you cannot grasp that a lot of the things that it is bringing you is causing you pain and misery. But the subconscious has no ability to judge or question the commands being sent to it. If, for most of your life, you have looked in the mirror and said to yourself, "Boy, you are fat," then you are creating the reality, "I am fat." Your subconscious receives that command and acts on it without judgment. If you believe that all bosses are assholes, and every boss you've ever had has treated you with no respect, guess what scenario your subconscious is going to think is the reality you want repeated. Please don't misunderstand this function of your subconscious and pass judgment on it. Without it, you would be dead by now. It has successfully created programs to stop you touching the hot stove. It knows how to get you across a busy road, what to do when you fall into water, and how you should behave on the edge of a tall building. Your subconscious mind contains millions of programs it has developed over the years, and they all run without asking your permission. Imagine if you were crossing the road, and an out-of-control automobile was heading straight for you. In less than a second, your subconscious has assessed the threat and loaded the exact survival program to get you out of harm's way. Now, would you like it to run the program immediately, or ask your permission first? You must have noticed some recurring themes in your life, events and situations that keep happening to you over and over again. Or perhaps you've witnessed self-destructive routines in the lives of your friends and family. I have a friend called Brian, who for the past 30 years has run the same relationship program over and over again. Brian is desperate to find love. He has been since I first met him nearly 3 decades ago. Here is Brian's relationship program, the one I have witnessed being run many hundreds of times over the last 30 years. 1. Brian meets a girl. 2. The girl likes Brian. Hooray! 3. Brian falls in love almost instantly. 4. The girl gets scared at how quick he's moving. 5. Girl starts to withdraw to try and slow him down a bit. 6. Brian senses her withdrawal and his desire increases. 7. Brian tries to fix the situation by doing the exact opposite of what she needs in that moment to feel reassured. 8. Girl ends the relationship. 9. Brian is devastated and can't believe that she wasn't the one. 10. Go to the beginning and start again. I can't tell you how many times I've witnessed this subroutine run from beginning to end. Every time I get a phone call from Brian that starts with the line, "Hey Craig, I've met the most amazing woman," my heart sinks a little. In that moment, I know we're about to go on the 10-step journey that will involve a lot of Groundhog Day-style conversations and eventually will end up with me comforting a distraught Brian over yet another painful breakup. Of course, one day he could meet the true woman of his dreams, but this can never happen until he breaks the program running in his subconscious mind. The biggest problem that Brian has is he doesn't even know the program exists. I've told him about it many times, but he denies it is possible, and every new relationship comes along with the claim, "I know I've said this before, Craig, but I know that with insert woman's name, it's going to be different." The biggest problem that you have is that you are equally unaware of most of your own self-destructive routines. Worse than that, even if you were aware of them, there is very little you can do consciously to remove them, because you are prevented from accessing the place that they are stored. To demonstrate what I mean, imagine for me that I pick up my cell phone and I call you right now, and I scream down the phone, "Help! I've locked myself out of my home!" Then my battery dies, and the call disconnects. There's no way you can assist with this problem because you don't know where I live, and even if you did, you don't have a key to open the door anyway. I would be wasting my time asking you to help, and you are wasting your time trying to arm wrestle the bad programs out of your head. So how do you deal with problems that reside in a location that you can't access? If you can't pinpoint the offending area of your subconscious, you must clean the whole of it. This spiritual cleaning is the concept of embracing stillness and allowing the ego-damaged areas of your being to be repaired by a force greater than you. There are many ways to achieve this, from yoga and meditation to chanting and drumming exercises. However, the most powerfully effective solution I have ever found is something called Ho Aponopono. If you don't already know about the ancient Hawaiian healing method called Ho Aponopono, then please trust me on this. I'm about to change your life. Ho Aponopono is the ancient Hawaiian spiritual process of acceptance, forgiveness, and gratitude. This is easily the most powerful knowledge I have ever learned in my life to date. This amazingly simple and yet 100% effective process begins with accepting responsibility for everything in your life. When I say everything, I mean everything! If you want to improve your life beyond your wildest dreams, you must completely forget about the concept of blame and throw away our predisposition of deciding certain situations are someone else's problem. This profound wisdom starts with the lesson that your awareness of something makes it your responsibility. Stop there a moment. It does not mean that it is your fault, but fixing it is your job, whether it is something happening to you or just someone you know. This concept is a little tricky to accept initially because your ego wants to fight against the accusations of blame. It also doesn't particularly care about the well-being of other people and doesn't want you to waste precious effort enhancing anyone's life but your own. The ego is, as it always is, insane. And when you learn to ignore it and take 100% responsibility for everything in your life, at that point magical things will start happening to you. What does 100% responsibility mean? It means that you accept that separation from others is an illusion, and that if something is happening to someone else, that it must also be happening to you. You create everything you become aware of, and only you can either give gratitude for that or clean it if it's causing pain for you or another. Everything you label good and bad about your life has been created by the divine power of your subconscious and soul. Essentially, because you are a fragment of God, you have the power of God, but unfortunately your ego interferes and causes big problems. It's a bit like giving a 12-year-old the keys to a 200-mile-an-hour Lamborghini and asking him not to crash it. As the ego continually struggles to avoid fear and gain pleasure, it inadvertently passes erroneous programs to the subconscious. As this part of you doesn't judge or question, it simply runs the program, and before you know it, a whole heap of misery is being delivered into your life. It seems entirely illogical that you would create such pain for yourself, and so you start looking for someone else to blame. This principle applies to everything in your life and the life of those around you. If you are overweight and unhappy about the size and shape of your body, then you must accept that you are responsible for creating this situation. You can no longer blame your genes, big bones, the proximity of a donut shop to your place of work, or your parents even. If your friend is having money trouble, this is your responsibility. I don't mean that you have to bail her out or beat yourself up and feel equally as miserable as they do, but you must accept that your awareness of it means it exists within you. Your boss has been a jerk and making your life miserable at work. His behavior is your responsibility. I will say it again. Accepting 100% responsibility does not mean that all these things are your fault. The concept of fault becomes irrelevant at the point where we give up on the blame game. It might sound crazy or just plain metaphorical that the world is your creation. But if you look carefully, you will realize that whatever you call the world and perceive the world is your world. It is the projection of your own mind. If you go to a party, can you see how in the same place, with the same light, the same people, the same food, the same drink, music, atmosphere, some people will enjoy themselves, while others will be bored. Some will be over-enthusiastic, some will be depressed, some will be talkative, and others will be silent. The out there, for every one of them, seems the same, but if one were to connect their brains to machines, immediately would show how different areas of the brain would come alive, how different perceptions there are from one person to the next. So even if they apparently share it, the out there, it's not the same for them, let alone their inner world, their emotions. Joe Vitale introduced me to this ancient wisdom through the book Zero Limits, which he co-wrote with a rather unusual clinical psychologist called Dr. Hugh Len. More than 30 years ago in Hawaii, at the Hawaii State Hospital, there was a special ward, a clinic for the mentally ill criminals. People who had committed extremely serious crimes. They were assigned there either because they had very deep mental disorders or because they needed to be checked to see if they were sane enough to stand trial. They had committed murder, rape, kidnapping, and other such crimes. According to a nurse that worked there in those years, the place was so bleak that not even the paint could stick to the walls. Everything was decaying, terrifying, and repulsive. No day would pass without a patient inmate attacking another inmate or a member of the staff. The people working there were so frightened that they would walk close to the walls if they saw an inmate coming their way in a corridor. even though they were all shackled all the time. The inmates would be never brought outside to get fresh air because of their relentlessly threatening attitude. The scarcity of staff was a chronic occurrence. Nurses, wardens and employees would prefer to be on sick leave most of the time in order not to confront such a depressive and dangerous environment. One day, a newly appointed clinical psychologist, a Dr. Stanley Hugh Len, arrived at the ward. The nurses rolled their eyes, bracing themselves for one more guy that was going to bug them with new theories and proposals to fix the horrid situation, who would walk away as soon as things became unpleasant, around a month later usually. However, this new doctor wouldn't do anything like that. Actually, he didn't seem to be doing anything in particular, except coming in and always being cheerful and smiling, in a very natural, relaxed way. He wasn't even particularly early in arriving every morning. From time to time, he would ask for the files of an inmate. He never tried to see them personally, though. Apparently, he just sat in an office, looked at their files, and to members of the staff who showed an interest, he would tell them about a weird thing called ho Aponopono. Little by little, things started to change at the hospital. One day, somebody would try again to paint those walls, and they would actually stay painted, making the environment more palatable. The garden started being taken care of. Some tennis courts were repaired, and some prisoners that up until then would never be allowed outside started playing tennis with the staff. Other prisoners would be allowed out of their shackles, or would receive less heavy pharmaceutical drugs. More and more obtained permission to go outside, unshackled, without causing trouble to the hospital's employees. In the end, the atmosphere changed so much that the staff was not on sick leave anymore. Prisoners gradually started to be released. Dr. Hugh Len worked there close to 4 years. In the end, there remained only a couple of inmates that were eventually relocated elsewhere. The clinic for the mentally insane criminals had to close. There are seminars where they teach you the many tricks to help you perform the process of ho Aponopono, but according to Joe Vitale, Dr. Hugh Len himself uses the simplest of formulas. Whenever a matter arises, and they arise incessantly, addressing the divine within you, you only have to say 4 things. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. That's it. Over and over again. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. If you want to discover more about the origins and evidence of Ho'opono, take a look at the book by Joe Vitale called Zero Limits. Joe goes into great detail about how this amazing principle, which has been passed down the ages, literally creates miracles. What you will discover if you download one of my subconscious reprogramming tracks from my website at www.craigbeck.com is that there are distinct traces of this method running through every recording. Whilst you will rarely hear me make reference to Ho'oponopono, you will almost certainly hear me use the words, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you, throughout the hypnosis tracks. Whether you're just trying to stop smoking or you're looking to attract the person of your dreams into your life, you will find a sub-attraction download that targets your precise desire or problem via my website. If you want to start manifesting the life of your dreams, you must simply accept your imperfection and seek forgiveness for it. I absolutely do not mean you need to apologize in a Catholic confessional sense of the word, heaping a gigantic load of shame onto your own shoulders. This guilt achieves nothing. Your acceptance and apology is simply a way of stating that you understand there is something man-made within you that is preventing divinity flowing. God, Source, the universe, is not disappointed, annoyed, or ashamed of you, as all those emotions are purely human states and not relevant to a perfect source of creation. You cannot clear the bad programming or erroneous beliefs in your subconscious with your conscious mind. It simply isn't powerful enough. Only the universe can clean the misaligned patterns, and it's through this apology that you allow the process to begin. You are completely unaware of what beliefs are hidden, and so you can't begin to find them. So just accept they're there, and that you are completely responsible, and you are sorry for their very existence. Ask the universe, source, divinity, God, or whatever you want to call it, to forgive you and your bad programming. Ask for it to be erased, and replaced with nothing, a void that can be then filled with the pure white light of love and divinity. As you begin this process, you will start to feel that your life is like a vase full of water. When the container is empty of joy and love, you feel disconnected from source. When the vase is full to the brim, the content soon goes stale like a stagnant pond. To achieve perfection in life, the contents of the vase must continually be flowing. As you empty that vase of love into other people's lives, it creates space for more love to flow into yours. Create the space daily for more love to flow into your life by giving away as much as you can. There will always be an abundance if you have the space to receive what is waiting and willing to come into your life. Let's recap the principles for manifesting magic relationships. 1. Accept that what you see isn't real. People rarely act the way they do to hurt you. We're all doing the best we can with the resources we have. We are all trying to run away from pain or towards pleasure. 2. Life is a big boomerang. Be careful what you throw out there, because it's going to come straight back to you. 3. You are 100% responsible for everything in your life. This life is your manifestation. It is your creation. If you are unhappy with elements of it or specific relationships, you have the power to clean the broken programs and replace them with new, life-enhancing ones. All there is to do is clean. The divine power inside. When my daughter was 5 years old, she got a wart on her thumb. She hated this small but unsightly growth and would often come up to me with a very sad face and say, "Daddy, I don't like this lump on my thumb. It's nasty. I want it to go away." One day, I was walking past her bedroom door. I heard her crying inside. I walked in and I found her sitting on her bed, sobbing into her favourite teddy bear. I sat with her a while and discovered it was the usual problem that was causing her to be so upset. I told her that the wart didn't want her to feel like this, and that if it knew how upset she was, it would almost certainly decide to go. I instructed her to speak to the wart before she went to sleep at night and tell it to leave. For a few evenings, I would linger outside her bedroom door and hear her speaking very politely and kindly to this blemish on her thumb. She would say, "Hello, Mr. Wart. I hope you don't mind, but I don't like you living on my thumb. I want you to go now." It was very cute to hear, and a perfect example of the beautiful innocence of children. They have a limitless imagination that has yet to be restrained by the rules and experiences of adulthood. We all forgot about Aoife's wart, until one day, about a month later, it suddenly popped into my mind, and I asked my daughter to let me see it. I wanted to check that it hadn't grown or changed shape. She looked at me, as though I were crazy, and said in the most incredulous voice, "Daddy, don't you remember? I asked Mr. Wart to go away." She showed me her hand, and there was absolutely no sign of the offending wart, not even a mark where it used to be. She wasn't at all surprised that it had vanished, because I told her that it would, and she had no reason not to believe me. After all, I'd also told her that Father Christmas comes with presents every year, and that the Tooth Fairy never forgets to leave money in return for baby teeth. All those other magical things I had told her about came true, so why wouldn't Mr. Wart disappear when asked politely? Fast forward 7 years, and now my teenage little girl came up to me once again, looking very sad. She told me she was getting bullied at school because she was getting acne on her face. She told me that in her desperation she had even tried asking the spots to go. But she explained to me that the magic doesn't work anymore. And she added, "Don't worry, Dad, I'm not stupid. I know it never really was magic at all." The magic was very real, and she was wrong to jump to the conclusion that it wasn't. One lesson I have learned the hard way, though, with teenagers is you can't change their minds by telling them they're wrong. Hormones, boys, and the gritty real world had got to her. It was too late for Aoife and her magic. Of course magic exists, and it's been proven time and time again by medical scientists all over the world. We very sensible and stern-faced adults don't like the childish word magic, so we call it something with a more grown-up twang to it. The placebo effect. The label is of little importance, but the results are the same. Essentially, in the case of my daughter, the wart went because she entirely believed and expected it to do so. Santa Claus comes on Christmas Eve. The tooth fairy buys teeth, and warts leave when you ask them to. Perhaps the spot stayed because she believed that the magic was just silly stuff from her childhood. The Bible claims that Jesus performed countless miracles, not least healing of the sick and crippled. Today, with our uber-cynical outlook on life, many of us declare those fantastical tales to be nothing more than far-fetched children's stories. However, the biggest problem with this debate is that the people who hold this view will see their opinion proved correct over and over again, giving them faith that they were right all along, and anyone who believes otherwise is a fool. What they can't see is that they're being hoisted by their own petard, because we get what we believe, whether that ends up being right or wrong. Essentially, what I'm saying is, if you believe that you have the divine power to heal yourself and manifest your own miracles, then you will successfully prove that magic exists over and over again. However, if you believe all this stuff is for the airy-fairy idiots with their heads lost in the clouds, then you will also prove once and for all that magic is nothing but pure nonsense. Is it really possible to use magic to heal ourselves? Faith Bryony wrote a wonderful book called Brain Sense. I want to share a little thought experiment that she suggests with you. Take 300 harried commuters with headaches, not something that would be too difficult to do in New York on any workday rush hour. Of course, they're shouting and they're whining strident protests, which only worsens their headaches, which is precisely what you want. You reassure them that you'll get their names listed on the society pages of the New York Times in recognition of their public service. You can't afford to pay them, and that settles them down long enough for you to herd them into 3 soundproof rooms. 100 headaches per room. And now the fun begins. You do nothing with the first 100. They get to glare at one another Big Apple style and ruminate on their throbbing temples. You make an eloquent speech to the second group, informing them that they are the lucky recipients of a newly developed and powerful pain-killing miracle drug. It's actually aspirin with codeine, a proven and old-fashioned pain reliever. Then you leave them too, alone with each other and their pain, contemplating their lawsuits against you. You make the same speech to the third 100, but you are lying to them. They think you are giving them the pain-relieving drug. In fact, they get a sugar pill. After half an hour, you ask your 300 captives to report on their headaches. In the do-nothing group, 20 say their headaches have gone. 80 are still suffering. In the second group, 90 report the complete disappearance of pain. That drug is certainly a miracle potion, the people say, and they want to know immediately where they can purchase it. In the third group, the ones you deceived, 45 still have headaches, but 50 do not. That pill did the trick, they say, happily reboarding the subway pain-free. Your experiment was a success, and you are off the hook, unless one of your subjects is a liability lawyer. But forget the legal ramifications for now. Look at what the experiment revealed. A sugar pill has no psychological action that will cure a headache, but 35 of your headache-free subjects in the third group provide evidence to the contrary. Why 35 and not 55? Because the results from the do-nothing group show headache pain will cease in 20% of your subjects after 1/2 hour regardless. Thus, for 35% of the subjects in our thought experiment, the sugar pill was just as much a miracle drug as the painkiller the members of the real drug group received. This cure, in the absence of any truly therapeutic agent, is the placebo effect. And it's more than a curiosity. It's a direct result of brain action. But how? Before we answer that question, we need to define precisely what the placebo effect is. It is not spontaneous remission. That's what the 20 people in the first group, and presumably 20 more in each of the other 2 groups as well, experienced. Some of us, no matter what the disease, get better for unknown reasons. The disease process simply reverses itself without any intervention. Whether remission is mere chance or the result of some self-healing process remains anybody's guess. Neither is the placebo effect deception or self-delusion. The people whose headaches disappeared after ingestion of the sugar pill are not lying, cheating, simple-minded or insane. Their pain disappears, and not because they consciously wish it to. In study after study, where both subjects and experimenters are blind to the experimental conditions, that is, no one, including the researchers, knows who is getting the placebo, measurable, clinically replicable improvements in the disease conditions occur in sizable fractions of all cases. Furthermore, the placebo effect is no small or insignificant statistical aberration. Estimates of the placebo cure rate range from a low 15% to a high 72%. The longer the period of treatment and the larger the number of physicians' visits, the greater the placebo effect. Finally, the placebo effect is not restricted to subjective self-reports of pain, mood, or attitude. Physical changes are real. For example, studies on asthma patients show less constriction of the bronchial tubes in patients for whom a placebo drug works. The body physically changes with no medical intervention. The placebo effect is not deception, fluke, experimenter bias, or statistical anomaly. It is instead a product of expectation, a product of belief. The human brain anticipates outcomes. When you believe in an outcome, you connect to the subconscious. The subconscious has a connection to divinity. The anticipation produces these outcomes. The placebo effect is magic. It is the self-fulfilling prophecy that you create, and it follows the patterns you'd predict if the brain were indeed producing its own desired outcomes, if the brain really is manifesting magic. Researchers have found, for example, placebos follow the same dose-response curve as real medicines. 2 pills, 2 sugar pills give more relief than 1, and a larger tablet is better than a smaller one. Placebo injections do more than placebo pills. Substances that actually treat one condition are used as placebo for another, and they have a greater placebo effect than sugar pills. The greater the pain, the greater the placebo effect. It's as if the more relief we desire, the more we attain. You don't have to be sick for a placebo to work. Placebo stimulants, placebo tranquilizers, even placebo alcohol produce predictable effects in healthy subjects. I'm just going to pause here in the studio to tell you a story. And this story is not in the paperback or digital versions of the book. I just want to tell it to you here in the audio book. I'm not going to write this out because I know it's a little bit naughty, it's bad, I'm very ashamed it happened, but it's applicable to what we're talking about. This goes back to when I was 18 years old at college in the northeast of England. And every lunchtime we used to go to the local pub for a pint of beer. And one day we decided to play a trick on one of our friends called Andy. We cut a small piece of paper and drew a little smiley face on it. And when he was in the toilet, we dropped it into his beer. When he had drank 2/3 of his drink, we pointed out the little square of paper in his drink to him and told him that it was an acid tap, LSD. He was not happy. But we went back to college and continued our lessons. After about half an hour, Andy started to have an hallucinogenic trip in the middle of English class. He ended up on the floor, crawling to the door, while shouting and screaming that little monsters were coming out of the floor and trying to hit him with tennis rackets. This was a piece of paper, and nothing more. What a terrible thing to do, and I hope Andy forgives us. Let's get back to the book. As in all brain actions, the placebo effect is the product of chemical changes. numerous studies have supported the conclusion that endorphins in the brain produce the placebo effect. In patients with chronic pain, for example, placebo responders were found to have higher concentrations of endorphins in their spinal fluid than placebo non-responders. At one time, researchers viewed the placebo effect as an impediment, a statistical annoyance that got in the way of objectively evaluating the efficacy of potentially legitimate therapies. That view has changed. The placebo effect is today seen as an important part of the healing process. It's been studied as a treatment for Parkinson's disease, depression, chronic pain, and more. For large numbers of patients, the placebo responders' belief in the therapy will create or enhance its effectiveness. In some respects, the placebo effect offers the best of all possible alternatives, therapeutic effects without the risk of negative side effects. That's why dozens of brain researchers are working to sort through the complexity of the numerous brain regions and neurotransmitters that produce placebo results. Theirs is no easy task. The placebo effect is not a single phenomenon, but the result of the complex interplay of anatomical, biochemical, and psychological factors. The same can be said for all our perceptions, I suspect. We see, hear, taste, touch, and smell pretty much what we expect to. How powerful is this magic inside us? Headaches are one thing. But what about serious illness, such as cancer? Does the magic work on the big C? One of the more dramatic events regarding placebo therapy was reported in 1957, when a new wonder drug, crobaiazine, held promise as the final solution for cancer problems. A patient with metastatic tumours and with fluid collection in his lungs, who demanded the daily intake of oxygen and the use of an oxygen mask, heard of crobaiazine. His doctor was participating in the crobaiazine research, and the patient begged him to be given the revolutionary drug. Bent by the patient's hopelessness, the doctor did so and witnessed a miraculous recovery of the patient. His tumours melted, and he returned to an almost normal lifestyle. But the recovery didn't last long. The patient read articles about crobaiazine not delivering what it had promised in cancer therapy. The patient then immediately had a relapse. His tumours came back. His doctor, deeply affected by the aggravation, resorted to a desperate trick. He told his patient that he had in his possession a new, improved, and corrected version of crobaiazine. It was simply distilled water in reality. But the patient fully recovered again after the placebo treatment and remained functional for 2 months. The final verdict on crobaiazine, published in the press, proved that the drug was totally ineffective. It was a complete failure. That was the coup de grace for the patient, who died a few days later. But how deep can the placebo effect trespass into the well-defined areas of medicine? Surely it can't joist with medicine's strike force. It cannot challenge surgery. Or can it? In 1939, an Italian surgeon named David Fischi invented a new technique for treating angina pectoris, chest pain, due to a lack of blood and oxygen getting to the heart muscle, usually due to an obstruction of the coronary arteries. Reasoning that increased blood flow to the heart would reduce his patient's pain, he performed 2 tiny incisions in their chest and tied knots on the 2 internal mammary arteries. 3/4 of the patients showed improvement. 1/4 of them was cured. The surgical intervention became standard procedure for the treatment of angina for the next 20 years. But in 1959, a young cardiologist, Leonard Kopp, put the Fischi procedure to the test. He operated on 17 patients. On 8 of them, he followed the standard procedure. On the other 9, he performed only the tiny incisions, letting the patients believe that they'd had the real thing. The result was a real upset. Those who'd had the sham surgery did just as well as those who'd had the Fischi technique. That was the end of the Fischi technique and the beginning of the documented surgical placebo effect. In 1994, Surgeon J. Bruce Moseley experimented with the surgical placebo. he split a small group of patients suffering from osteoarthritis of the knee into 2 equal groups. Both groups were told that they would undergo arthroscopic surgery, but only the first group got the real thing. The other group was left virtually untreated, with the doctor performing only tiny incisions to make the arthroscopic scenario credible. Similar results were reported in both groups. Moseley, stunned by the outcome, decided to perform the trial with a larger statistical sample in order to reach safer conclusions. The results were replicated. Arthroscopic surgery was equal therapeutically to the placebo effect. I could fill a book 10 times as large as this one with stories and examples of placebo and magic, but I'm sure you get the idea. And you are, of course, free to research and explore the phenomenon more if you wish. However, more evidence is only necessary if you do not believe. As always, I want to keep these books free of any padding and fluff. I want you to be able to pick up this book, listen to it within an hour, and immediately apply the wisdom into your life. If you have a recurring health concern, or indeed any area of your life that is not serving you at the moment, then bring it to mind and keep it there for the moment. At the end of this audiobook, I'm going to tell you the mantra that I've used to fix major problems in my life. A mantra that has never failed. A mantra that has healed 100% of the issues that I have ever used it to address. However, first, I need to explain to you how I discovered this secret and how it arrived at the time that I really needed it the most. In 2010, my world came crashing down around me. Everything that could go wrong did exactly that. I was running a very large commercial radio station in the northeast of England. I was earning more money than I ever had in my life, and I was living a lifestyle that most would be envious of. Luxury homes, 5-star vacations, designer clothes, top-end cars were all a part of my day-to-day life. Things were going wonderful with my job. And just before Christmas 2009, I was offered a new contract in a new role with the company. This new contract had far less protection, but much more remuneration. Essentially, they were offering me fewer rights, but more cash. And greed won the day. The new money started to roll in, and we had an amazing festive break. I returned to work in the new year and found to my surprise that the company director, who was my biggest fan, had been fired and replaced with a new guy. This new director immediately set about marking his territory and making key changes to the business. When he came across this very expensive guy with a very weak contract called Craig Beck, he saw the opportunity to send a dramatic message and fired me with the only explanation of, "Thanks for your service, but we're going in a different direction now." So there I was, a man in his mid-30s, with 2 children, and the outgoings of a football star. I'd been fired for the first time in my life, and the pain to my ego was almost crippling. What I didn't know at the time was this was the beginning of the worst year of my life. I did eventually find a new job, but at a 50% pay cut. The new position would require me to move 200 miles away from my children and only see them at the weekends for a few hours. It put enormous pressure on my relationship with my wife. I won't bore you with the full pity party of 2010, but by June of that year I was on my knees. My health had crashed. I was constantly at the doctor's surgery, taking a colourful handful of different medications every morning. My financial situation had gone a similar route to the Lehman Brothers, and my marriage had collapsed beyond repair. I sat in my damp, rented room, with a pile of bills and divorce papers in one hand, and a fistful of pills in the other. This was my lowest moment, and I couldn't see a way out of the mess. Let's skip the misery bit because it's getting boring now. Let's fast forward to December. Everything had changed. My finances had turned around. I'd stopped taking all the medication. I'd lost 56 pounds of fat and had a super-toned, fit, healthy body. My ex-wife and I decided to keep the divorce as amicable as possible for the sake of the kids. We didn't even use lawyers. Everything was agreed amicably, face to face. I landed a new job 100 miles closer to my children. What caused such dramatic turnaround? Magic. I stopped blaming the world for my problems. I embraced the principles of Ho Aponopono, and I accepted responsibility for all the issues in my life. I had to accept fully that losing my job had been my creation. The end of my marriage was my own manifestation. And programs running in my subconscious mind had generated all the doom, gloom, and poor health. I set about cleaning. And to do this, I used a mantra called Mourner's Prayer. Morna was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, on May 19, 1913, into the respected family of Kimokio. Her mother was one of the few remaining kahunas, one who uses words and chants to heal, and as such became a lady-in-waiting to the Queen, the last monarch and only woman to reign in the Kingdom of Hawaii near the end of the monarch's life. While there's no direct translation for kahuna, literally ka means light and huna means secret, as in sacred wisdom. In English, kahuna is often translated as shaman, priest, expert, or magician, if you like. However, a kahuna, having the power of a shaman, the focused training of an expert, and the mystical links of a priest, is a spiritual leader and reverent caretaker of her or his community, merging the inner and outer worlds into blended harmony. Morna was surrounded by this ancient oral healing tradition from the beginning. She grew up in a multidimensional world where inner and outer realities were fluid. At age 3, she was recognized to carry on this living tradition. Since the training was oral, handed down from teacher to student, there were no books to read, no notes to take. Morna learned by listening, repeating, and remembering. According to Martin Carruthers, a student was expected to have a natural aptitude, a good memory, and to learn quickly. They were thoroughly tested. Instructions were given twice, with a maximum of 3 repetitions. Little time was wasted on the incompetent or the slow. In addition to her kahuna training, Morna went to Catholic school, where the way of Christ deeply influenced her spiritually. Eventually, she went on to study the metaphysical traditions of India and China, later the works of Edgar Cayce, the American psychic and past life researcher. In the native Hawaiian community, a kahuna served all equally and with respect. To a certain extent, the kahuna was involved in every aspect of community life, healing mental, emotional, and physical illnesses, as well as resolving broader disagreements. By mediating between the spiritual realms and the community, a kahuna maintained a necessary balance of harmony. Healing took place in different ways, at different levels. According to Carruthers, a kahuna could often recognize and dissolve potential problems before they occurred. If a disease did not respond to herbal remedies, massage, or healing chants, then that disease was considered to represent an imbalance in the community. Ho Aponopono, family healing, might be required. Morna lived the way of her ancestors as a valued member of her community, quietly practicing her gifts of healing for over half her life. She was a gentle soul who spoke little but felt a lot. She inspired relaxation, trust, and a deep sense of peace. She didn't try to explain things. One could just feel something special in her presence. My impression is that she was sending healing energy through her silence and intent. She was very loving and soft-spoken. She said that Western people have great difficulty in putting the intellect behind. It is difficult for the Western mind to get a grasp of a higher being, because in traditional Western churches, the higher beings are not made evident. She continued, Western man has gone to the extremes with his intellectualism. It divides and keeps people separate. Man then becomes a destroyer because he manages and copes rather than letting the perpetuating force of divinity flow through him for the right reason. She recognized the depth of dis-ease and pain from which Western civilization needed healing and knew that Ho Aponopono could help. In 1976, when Morna was 63, she began to develop a new form of Ho Aponopono, modifying the original process. Her system is simple and can be used successfully by anyone. The healing process includes one's soul and the divine. Morna has said, "We can appeal to divinity who knows our personal blueprint, for healing all thoughts and memories that are holding us back at this time. She continued, "It is a matter of going beyond traditional means of accessing knowledge about ourselves. We are the sum total of our experiences, which is to say that we are burdened by our pasts. When we experience stress or fear in our lives, if we would look more carefully, we could find that the cause is actually a memory. It is the emotion which is tied to these memories which affects us now. The subconscious associates an action or person in the present with something that happened in the past. When this occurs, emotions are activated and stress is produced. The process of Ho Aponopono involves 4 phrases, which can be repeated in any order. 1. I'm sorry. 2. Please forgive me. 3. Thank you. 4. I love you. By saying these words over and over, a person is said to connect his or her own inner light with the light of Source. Over time, patterns in the subconscious dissolve, and by forgiving the parts within that hold those patterns, the person's outer world regains balance and harmony. Clean, erase, and find your own Shangri-La. Where? Within yourself. The process is essentially about freedom, complete freedom from the past, Morna says. Morna was named a living treasure of Hawaii in 1983. In August 1980, at the age of 67, Morna introduced this ho-opono healing process at the Huna World Convention in Hawaii. She spent the next decade teaching ho-oponopono throughout the United States, Asia, and Europe. At the age of 70, Morna was officially recognized as a kahuna lapa and was named a living treasure of Hawaii in 1983. In the late fall of 1990, Morna embarked on her last tour of lectures and seminars, traveling throughout Europe and Jerusalem. In January 1991, she returned to Germany, where she lived quietly at a friend's home in Kirchheim, near Munich, until she passed away on February the 11th, 1992, at the age of 79. Truly, the biggest gift I can give you is to tell you the mantra that I use to fix my broken life, to cure my health problems, and to return order and balance to not just my life, but the life of my family and all those who surround me. To use this miraculous healing process, take yourself to a quiet, peaceful place and spend a few moments doing the breathing exercise that we talked about earlier. Allow all the stress and struggle of life to flow out of your body with each outward breath. Be present in the moment and slowly allow the issue you want to heal to come into your conscious thoughts. Try not to label or judge it, and start to consider how grateful you would feel if it was removed from your life. Next, slowly and rhythmically, read Morna's prayer 4 times over. That is all it takes. You don't need to do this more than once, but you can if it gives you peace. This is my version of Morna's prayer. As I give you this example, I will use the success of this book as my issue. You can, of course, replace that with your own personal issues. Dear Universe, the super subconscious, and all those who care about me in spirit, please locate the origin of my feelings and thoughts, of the profound effect this book and this series of books has on the people who discover it. May it change their life. May it inspire and spread joy and happiness around the world. Take each and every level, layer, area, and aspect of my being to this origin. Analyze it and resolve it perfectly with God's truth. Come through all generations of time and eternity, healing every incident and its appendages based on the origin. Please do it according to God's will, until I am at the present filled with light and truth. God's peace and love, forgiveness of myself for my incorrect perceptions, forgiveness of every person, place, circumstance, and event that has contributed to these feelings and thoughts. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Thank you for listening to The Power of Ho Aponopono, an introduction to the ancient Hawaiian healing ritual. If this concept resonates with you, and you have an urge to continue the journey, I would urge you to go and find an audiobook called The Art of Happiness, Peace and Purpose, Manifesting Magic Part 1. This is the starting point for a life-changing 7-part journey into abundance, health and vitality. As a closing favor for me, would you please now go back to the online store that you bought this book from and leave a review and rating? Oh, and remember, the future doesn't exist. So, how about do it right now? Until we speak again, peace and love. Oh, P.S. Brian just called. Apparently he's met this amazing woman. Hi there, this is Craig back in the studio to tell you about my VIP coaching club. Do you want to be the next person to start living the life of their dreams? More abundance, better relationships, improved health, spiritual peace? Visit the website, www.craigback.com. So many other people spend an entire lifetime not quite having enough. They get stuck in a job they don't like, living hand to mouth, dreaming of the life they really want. You know what? It doesn't have to be this way. You are about to discover just how easy it can be to manifest your dreams. Happiness, wealth, and abundance are not just for the lucky few. When you join my VIP coaching club, you become one of my members who know that there is a simple process that has the power to deliver anything you truly desire. Now, if you're thinking this sounds too good to be true, isn't that exactly the sort of thinking that keeps most people trapped in a life that they find empty and unfulfilling? If you are prepared to open your mind and try something new, I will show you how to create more abundance, wealth, love, and happiness than you ever thought possible. As you think about all the areas of your life that are going to dramatically improve when you get this knowledge, you'll notice that wealth and success have nothing to do with geography. Not all rich people come from privileged backgrounds. You are about to become a part of a very elite group of truly happy, peaceful people. Remember, it's the things you don't do that you regret. Sure, you can stop listening now. You can never visit the website. You can risk nothing. Your life stays exactly the same as it was yesterday. But ask yourself, is that a good thing? Stop by the website and download my free Life Mastery ebook. And I hope you decide now to join my Life Mastery Coaching Club. You'll get instant access to a life-changing library of secret knowledge and information. I will personally show you how to fix any problem or bad habit, improve your finances, boost your career, and even enhance your relationships. Yes, you should believe me on this because I've been there and done it all. This is entirely possible. The amount of happiness and abundance you currently have is directly linked to what you subconsciously believe you should have. Among all the other benefits of joining, I'm going to show you how to flick the hidden switch in your unconscious mind and allow wealth and abundance to flood into your life. If you do exactly what I say, your life will dramatically improve. I guarantee it. So many of us pick up a lot of bad programming from well-intentioned people during our childhood. We're told that money is hard to come by, or even more extreme, the root of all evil. Many of us push wealth away because we believe it's greedy and shallow to want it. The sooner you decide to let this information into your life and open your mind to it, the sooner you will discover that this is all incorrect. It is entirely possible to be spiritually at peace and full of happiness and love while surrounded by abundance. It is not only possible, but it is entirely natural. Money isn't evil, it is freedom. It gives you the power to provide the very best for your loved ones. You should join right now and let me show you how to flood your life with happiness, peace, love, and purpose with just a few simple changes. Everyone can improve their life, just as soon as they get the tools and the information to do so. The final question is, are you ready? For more information, visit www.craigback.com.